I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield.
I'm Kate Walton-Elliott.
It is raining at last here in the Pacific Northwest, and we have got the BMW iX M60 to play with for the week. It's very expensive, and it's equally fast. Hey Kate, how come you get to drive this first?
Well, I got the keys,
Right.
and I'm not going to give them back, actually.
Right. It is
So-
a stunning vehicle.
It is. I mean, we'll get to what the interior is like, because I have some words. But to drive, it is on point.
It's tight, it's responsive, the steering is very well set up, it's incredibly easy to park, it drives like something a lot smaller.
It does. Well, I believe this version of the car, the M version, has the four-wheel steering. And if it is the most subtle but effective four-wheel steering I've encountered.
And look, this is another very expensive, high-end luxury car, and I know that people are going to criticize us. We actually had someone this week saying, I'm not going to watch your content anymore because you only ever review high-end expensive cars. And believe me, we try at all opportunities to drive affordable cars as well. It's just that right now there are very few truly affordable cars in the marketplace.
And we always, or pretty much always, will ask for the base trim. We never, ever get the base trim, but we always ask base trim.
Yes, today the review is very wet and ooky. Very ooky indeed.
It is, but it has given me an opportunity to drive this car in miserable conditions.
And it still behaves very well.
It does. I basically floored it on a slip road, no other cars around, and it kept its direction perfectly. It did not break traction. It was really an exceptionally well-behaved car, even under quite extreme provocation.
So when we drove the i4, one of our criticisms was the front end lifted up, it was a bit squirrely, it didn't have quite the refinement we'd want from BMW power delivery. Definitely for the all-wheel drive iX M60, we definitely have that refinement and that control. When you accelerate in this car, it does give you power in a very measured way, but if you were to squeeze the go pedal now, it would give you a push back in your seat feeling.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's really important to note, because this car's main competitor, number one competitor, is the Model X. And Model X is now being offered with, the plaid drivetrain, incredible performance, incredible speed, and the neck-breaking acceleration. And I think if BMW had not built the iX M60 with that in mind, it would be losing at every turn. But here's the thing, because it's got a very measured power delivery, because it's got that optional all-wheel steer, because it's got a very direct steering feel, it does feel like a driver's car, which is something that I've never really felt has always been true for some Tesla models. Some of them, yes, drive very well and give you a lot of feedback. And over the years, Tesla has got better at dialing in feedback for customers. The early Teslas, early Model S's didn't have that connected feel in the same way that more recent ones do. But I think that BMW has really captured that dialed in feel. And if you're going to be spending 105 plus grand on a car, you want that, don't you?
Yeah, you very much do. And this is really the culmination of BMW's experience of electric drivetrains. This is the 5th generation of their drivetrain, and their experience in building really exceptional drivers' vehicles. And that's something that Tesla is developing that kind of knowledge and background in from doing it for many years now. But BMW have been building M series cars for 50 years. This is, in fact, the 50th anniversary of the M series. And you can really feel that knowledge and that finesse that's come from building race spec cars, from building high performance luxury touring cars. It really does speak to it when you get in this vehicle, and it so instantly feels so comfortable on the road, but goes exactly where you want. And it doesn't have that liftoff that the i4 has. It has the all-round air suspension, which is what we said the i4 needed.
Yep.
And in this car, it stays so square on the road. It's such a joy to drive.
It also stops incredibly quickly.
Yes.
It has a very good blended brake system.
Yes.
And while the default drive mode has very minimal regenerative braking, and BMW for years has been kind of quite reticent, that's the word, to add a huge amount of accelerator liftoff in standard default mode. You put it in B, which is what you're in right now, and you can lift off and come to a complete standstill.
Yeah, as someone who's been driving EVs for a long time, I really miss one pedal driving when it's not there. I expect cars to behave in that way now, and this does have a very good regenerative braking mode.
The regen on this is not too strong. I wish that this car had a paddle to allow you to dial it in a little bit more, but I'm not surprised that BMW hasn't gone for paddles, because that's just not BMW's way. BMW's way is these controls exist, they're very good, you should be using the proper controls. Let's talk about the size of this vehicle and the feel of this vehicle, because it is a full-size car, and yet when you're on the road, it doesn't feel massive. The hood, the bonnet is sloped down enough that you can barely see the very front of the car from the windscreen as you're driving. The interior, the cabin, is very contemporary, very spacious, quite bold, considering that BMWs traditionally have always been you're cocooned inside the vehicle, the exception obviously being the i3. But this doesn't feel like you're cocooned inside a BMW. This is an interior that I would expect to be more attributable to a Japanese car or an East Asian car or maybe even an American car like the Model X. It's much more airy and spacious than your traditional BMW has. You have this separation here between the center console and the dashboard, and there's cup holders in a sensible place, and the iDrive system with this crystal rotary dial here, very nice. This wood effect trim here with the embossed labels is very different to what I was expecting this car to have. Obviously I saw the concept car that came before this, but this is actually very close to the concept.
It is, and I think that for you it may have been more of a shock, but for me, coming from owning an i3 before it, this feels very much like taking some of the very best bits of the i3 and putting them into a more consumer-oriented package. The i3 felt very much like a car for electronauts, for people who were there trying to be in the move to electric vehicles very early on, the early adopters, whereas this is starting to feel much more like a vehicle for a mass market. I do have some concerns about how this vehicle will age and whether it will age well, not in terms of the quality of the interior, but in terms of the fact that there's a lot of rose gold accents.
Yeah, I mean, crystal for your seat controls.
Yeah, and that, I wonder how that will age, but then also I am one of those weird people who really enjoys the esoteric cars of the 70s, where they went, I'm going to put shag carpet everywhere in this, and brown.
It's funny you bring up the 70s cars, because that steering wheel reminds me of several 70s cars all kind of munged together. First, of course, the steering wheel is not round.
No.
And second, there's only 2 spokes on the steering wheel. And in some ways, that very svelte steering wheel, steering column, reminds me a little bit of the Citroen DS with its single spoke. Obviously, these days, single spokes are almost impossible to make because of safety regulations. And the reason that central part of the steering wheel on this car is so big is because it's obviously housing an airbag. But it's a very minimalist design of a steering wheel as well.
It is, and unlike a lot of cars, although it does have buttons on here and a little rotary controller, they feel quite subtle and they are tactile. They're not capacitive, which is a very good thing. I'm very fond of actual buttons that you press. So the simplicity that you get there does come through really well, and it does feel much less busy than a lot of vehicles do, but still provides the controls that you need.
And a hexagonal shaped steering wheel. Can we just talk about that for a second?
Yeah, I'm not totally sold on the hexagonal shape. I know, I should be. I love the Allegro and I love Quartic steering wheels. I think that's a weird little arcane bit of history, but I'm not, having driven this a fair distance, I'm still not wholly sold on this for comfort or for driving.
I mean, it's definitely a styling move, right? We've got hexagons throughout the cabin. There's hexagons above the speaker grille in the dash. There's a kind of quasi-hexagonal shaped brake pedal. There are other kind of design elements that have that kind of angular feel to them. And I think that obviously someone at BMW took that and ran with it and took it to quite extreme levels in order to get that kind of that design language dialed in, as it were.
Yes, and I think if you read the press release, they will tell you exactly in approximately 4,000 words,
Right.
just how dialed in they got it.
The traditional BMW tone.
The tone, the loquacious selection of thesaurus found words. It's quite a delight to read in some senses.
What was it I said last time when we were reviewing a BMW? It wasn't loquacious.
I can't
I cannot remember. Answer on a postcard, please. All right, infotainment system.
Yes.
Very good. It's clear to read. Let's put it like that. It's got the kind of the gesture based dial up, dial down things. It's responsive. Not as responsive as necessarily some of the other systems we've seen. I think the Google, the Android automotive dashboards are the best.
Yes, I think that's
But
true.
this one is clear, it's clean. I don't know if you can see it with sunglasses on because I haven't driven it with
Sunglasses?
sun. But it's something that I can interact with and you can interact with. It's not kind of so turned away from the passenger that they can't interact with it, and I like that. Some weird choices when it comes to kind of being able to interact with the car. The OK BMW system works very well, at least it has for me.
Yes. So
It just came on and it said no server connection. You can also use Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. It's wireless CarPlay,
It
which
is
seems
wireless
to work
Android
very
Auto,
well, and
which-
wireless Android Auto. And can we just also give a kudos to BMW for a design choice that I think more automakers need to do? The wireless charging pad for your mobile phone is the hell away from your eyeballs, which means there is less risk that you're gonna glance at your phone.
Yeah, the temptation is removed, which is really good. I will say that I've had a much better experience with this than we had with the i4. You can really see the progress that BMW's made. This is operating system 8, and I'm not sure which revision it is. But I had no disconnections on my phone. I didn't have to reset it. both of which were things that I experienced
With the
quite
i4,
frequently
yeah.
with the i4. So you can see that that's come along a long way. But I do still have some hesitancy about the complexity of the interface. I do find things in there, but when I want something, sometimes it's several button presses away.
That is very true. And I found that I got around that by asking the car, using the OK car name, to turn things on. So, for example, when I got in it, I couldn't find the lumbar support. And it's worth noting that there's no buttons on the seats, which are very comfortable, by the way. They're on the driver's door and the passenger door. I should point out that the passenger door has memory settings for the front seat passenger, which is, again, something that you only really get in a high-end vehicle like this. And I wanted to adjust the lumbar support, and there was no lumbar adjustment here. So I literally just said, OK, car name, show me seat settings. It then found the seat settings, and I was able to use those without taking my eyes off the road too much. But I totally agree with you.
Yeah, I think they're trying to do quite a lot with this system. In fact, they're trying to do a hell of a lot with this system, and it has a whole page of kind of apps that you can use that adjust various things. And I kind of want to applaud them, but I also think that it hasn't quite got there yet. It's so close. It's really good in so many ways. But as we saw in actually the video that we did, the BMW was one of the worst performing cars in terms of the amount of time that drivers were distracted when they needed to perform certain functions, which I think is a very unfortunate situation. And also, I'm still somewhat hesitant about BMW adopting the felony contravention of business model.
Right.
You can't modify it because you have subscriptions, so this is all very locked down. And I know I own a Kia, I can't really comment that much.
We've talked about this at length on the channel, and I think it's fair enough for us to say that if you buy a car, you should own the car.
Yes.
And automakers are moving away from that model. Tesla's doing it, BMW's doing it. I don't want to pay $20 a month to unlock my heated seat.
No. And that makes me wary. But at the same time, that is where all the automakers are going at the moment. Until we get some legislation to fix that, that's where we're stuck right now.
And it's one of the reasons why, when buying a car today, I advise that people buy rather than lease. Because if you look and you buy the car, you're pretty much guaranteed that any car you buy today will be yours. It will have competent safety features. It may not have autonomous driving, but at least you will own it and you will own the features in it. It's very unlikely that those features will be removed from any modern car coming to market today. There are a few exceptions, but they really are a few exceptions. Hello.
Hello? It's raining out here. Get your butt over. I should have taken my umbrella. Left me outside for like 5 minutes.
Umbrella, Ella.
Okay, driver. Off you go.
There's lots to talk about behind the wheel that we haven't discussed yet, but I want to save that until the end of the review. And I want to talk about the rear seats. Very comfortable rear seats, heated seats for both outboard passengers, 3-stage heated seats as well.
Oh, yeah.
And individual climate control. So this is a quad climate zone car.
That it is, which is really very pleasant for those of us who like a different temperature to our partners.
Yeah, I mean, my partner likes it a lot warmer than I do. I prefer it cooler. The only thing I wish that this car had was split temperature options. I would love that in the future, BMW, if you're watching. I would love to be able to say, let's have Fahrenheit for one passenger and Celsius for another. But you know what? I did tech that out this week. I was driving and I was a bit hot, and so I asked the car using the OK car name command to set the temperature of the driver's side of the cabin to 22 degrees Celsius, and it did, even though the gauges are currently in Fahrenheit, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a good behavior for the car to have.
Yes, I've done that in other cars before, and I've said please set the temperature to 22 degrees, and it's just gone, I'm in Fahrenheit. Oh, what are you talking about? That's below freezing. Surely you don't want to be below freezing. I can't go that low.
Yes, that's not entirely helpful.
It's not entirely helpful. All right, so the head-up display in this car is lovely. It has a very clear display of what's going on, and it's just at the right point for my line of sight. I've got the speed limit. I've got my current speed displayed. I've also got my lane keep assist set up, and it's also showing me that there is a car in front. All the information I need. When you have navigation set and you're using the built-in BMW navigation, what you also end up with is the ability to have a map displayed on the head-up, full color map, when you come up to an intersection, junction, and that's very useful.
It also does the
augmented
reality camera view.
Right, and I'm conflicted about that.
Yeah,
it's cool.
It is cool and slightly distracting at times, but also when I was navigating a fairly complex junction earlier this morning, I decided that I needed to make a quick stop off that I don't normally make, and I realized a junction too late. Came off. It was a multi-split junction with multiple different turnings, and it wasn't one I was familiar with. And having that display was actually quite handy because it indicated, no, you want this particular turning of the 4, and I found that quite nice. But yes, I can see how, as a driver, you might find it distracting and look at that instead of the road, which is not ideal.
I really like the idea of the augmented reality display, and if you have a passenger in the car, I think it's going to be perfect because they are going to be able to look at it. I found it incredibly distracting because I was looking at the feed from the front camera rather than the road ahead, and while obviously you are seeing what the car is seeing, I think there's something very weird about driving using the screen. Like, I'm not in the military, I don't need night vision.
No.
But at the same point, what I would like to see is that augmented reality setup for the head-up display, so that it had arrows projected onto the windscreen, maybe with quite a wide field of view, saying this is the way you need to go. And obviously at the moment it's done through projecting head-up display onto the windscreen. In the future, I would love to see see-through LCD technology implemented so that the whole windshield became a display, and then it gave you directions based on that. That would be brilliant.
It would be brilliant. It would have adverts on.
Not until the car could drive itself.
Yeah.
Which, let's talk about that as well. Only level 2. Lane keep assist and radar assisted cruise control. No hands-off driving. It has sensors in the wheel, so if you take your hands off the wheel, it nags you and wants it back. I was under-impressed with that system.
Yeah, I basically had to drive. It does a very traditional level 2, where it shouts at you if you go out of your lane, and it gives you a little nudge when you get near to the lane markings.
And the car ahead is your Kia Niro EV, and it has open pilot on, and it drove me up here today.
Well, yes.
Obviously, normally we'd be driving right up that car's bottom and Michael would be hanging out the back, but because it's so wet and horrible, we're not doing that because it would not be safe in this kind of condition, but also, as I said earlier, the camera would just be covered in water in 5 seconds flat, and that would be pretty pointless. Talking about high-end screens though, Kate, let's talk about this.
I know. I so want to be annoyed by it. I so want to find it ridiculous and stupid and froofy, but actually it's really quite cool.
So this trim variant of the iX M60, comes with a photochromic sunroof. It can become opaque at the touch of a button.
Yes.
And it cuts down glare from the sun, while also enabling you to have a sensible level of interior illumination. The first time I encountered electrochromic was when I was in Israel as a guest of Better Place. We were going to film with Better Place, so you know how long ago that was, 2012, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the hotel that I was in had a bathroom with photochromic glass between the bedroom and the bathroom. And I must have played with that probably for about 10 minutes. And of course, Winter raved about the photochromic glass when he went and drove the Porsche Taycan family earlier this year, the sporty one, the GT.
Yeah.
He had a lovely time enjoying that as well. So I know that everyone on the team feels the same way about that.
Yeah, and like I say, I want it to be ridiculous, because it is kind of ridiculous, but also just pressing that button and watching it go whoop whoop, it's ridiculously entertaining in a way that I really am quite ashamed about. I get that if you're spending $110,000 on a car, $105,000 on a car, that you want to know that you have spent $105,000 on a car.
Yeah, and I think you and I find that a bit ludicrous, but you know, c'est la vie. So interior lighting at night time on this is obviously as you would expect for anything this kind of size and price. The interior is nice and quiet. I honestly prefer this to the EQS. How about you?
Yes, I think for me, hands down, this is... If I had that much money to throw at a vehicle, or someone gave me $100,000 and said, you have to buy a car with this, you can't spend it on anything else, then this would be probably top of my list at the moment.
I would buy a custom Land Rover Defender EV conversion.
Okay, so let's say it has to be a new car.
Okay.
Yeah. Then this would be certainly very high up on my list.
I can see that.
It's extremely competent. It's very good fun to drive. And the interior, it's opulent in a way that I personally probably would ruin fairly quickly. But it is very pleasant having heated armrests.
Thanks for reminding me about that, Kate. This has got heated armrests on both the door and the center console, which is just...
Only for the driver.
True.
In fact, several features. Let's say that the massage seat, only for the driver. You don't like your spouse very much if you buy this car, because they don't get the massage seat.
But, you know, all jokes aside, I would be fine being a passenger in this in a way that I wasn't in the EQS. The EQS felt huge compared to this.
It did, without
it is.
offering a lot more interior space.
Driving-wise, it felt as nimble, because it had the four-wheel steering, but I still prefer this for driving. This has a connection to the road. The EQS did not, in that same way.
It does. And I feel like the steering integration of the four-wheel steering is just a little bit more subtle on this. It wasn't something that shouted at me that the car had four-wheel steering. It was only when I was in town and I was like, this is much more maneuverable than I was expecting. And parking this is much more reasonable than I was expecting for a car of this size. In fact, after I parked it, took it down to the market, most vehicles that we've test driven have been on our shopping trips, and slotting it into a space was no bother at all.
Absolutely. It's incredible how maneuverable this is. I have a couple of criticisms. Obviously, there's USB-C sockets everywhere. There's two up front. Each rear seat passenger gets two each, but no USB-A, which I think is a bit of a letdown. Most cars are now coming with a USB-A and a USB-C. The other thing that I'm not a fan of is that charge inlet, which is the same kind of feeling one that you have in the i4.
With its leaf catching, rain catching. By this morning when I went out to take the car off charge, there were already several bits of pine needles stuck in there, which is a Pacific Northwest trait. It would either have been pine needles or ants. And,
you know, while this is an incredible drive, I also feel that at the end of the day, I'm not sure I could justify owning this even if I had $100,000 to spare, because I like my vehicles to be more practical, less fancy. And I think that's just me. I'm a farm girl at heart, right? However, if I had to choose between the EQS and this every day, because this is a better designed vehicle. BMW iX M60. What does the M stand for, Kate?
Mmm.
Very nice.
Very nice indeed. Very tasty.
It's a tasty car. It's got blue brake calipers. That means it's even tastier.
It stops quicker.
It stops quicker. I'm not sure about this paint. I've kind of gone from hating it to liking it to, I don't know how I feel about it, but it is available in other colours.
That's good. It's not just available in
Gunmetal
grey.
grey, yeah.
Yeah.
But look, it is a stonkingly quick car.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stonkingly comfortable car. It's very competent in corners. It's got all-wheel steering. It also has a very expensive price tag. So who is it for?
It is for people with a lot of money going spare. It's for people who like driving and have a lot of money.
As opposed to the EQS, which was for people who had a lot of money and had a driver.
Yes, this is a car for you to drive yourself, as evidenced by the fact the driver's seat gets a massage function and no one else does.
And I think, you know, it's one of those things that when you're driving a vehicle like this, sometimes you're reminded at every corner, this is an insanely expensive car. Do not prang it. Do not damage it. Do not do anything else to it. Which is how I felt driving the Genesis and also the EQS. This doesn't feel like it's 100+ grand. It just feels like a very good car that just happens to be expensive.
It does. It feels extremely well put together. It feels like care and attention has gone into the design and to the feel and to the handling and to the road man. Just every part of it feels like someone has spent time on it.
Driving this, I'm sure on the Autobahn would be an absolute joy. We haven't rapid charged it this week, but it's got the same rapid charging capability as the i4, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
I don't think this is a car that is going to necessarily be a conquest for BMW. It's not a conquest buyer's car.
No.
But I think definitely a flagship.
Yeah,
electric SUV.
This is for the high-end BMW drivers who want the motorsport performance version of the BMW brand. They want to keep that, but they want to go electric for whatever reason they want to go electric.
I mean, I can see an X5 and X7 driver being very comfortable behind the wheel in this.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if BMW are ever going to make a 7-seat variant of this. I'm glad that this is not a 7-seat though, because it means that it's got plenty of space in the back. It's not compromised by having to find space for an extra set of seats. But it also feels much better as a 5-seat car for the passengers. You've got nicer seats, you've got all of those heated doodads in the rear and quad zone climate control. I don't like the fact that it doesn't have a front trunk. You can't even open that easily.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask about what's the utility of a front trunk. And it's extra storage, particularly with EVs. It's quite handy to have that granny cable just in case you turn up at your grandmother's house and she doesn't have a charger and you just want to plug in and top up.
It also is a good place to store high ticket items.
Yeah, that are out of view.
I mean, San Francisco, many other cities around the world, people are smashing and grabbing, especially high-end cars, with no kind of locked rear area. And because this is a crossover, you can get into the back very easily. As long as you can break that glass, you can get in. That's a lot harder to get into. It's not impossible, but it's a lot harder to get into.
Well, and in this car, it's a warranty void.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So it's really not ideal, But
I would have loved to have seen this with some storage up front. That's just a personal thing. And I just feel that things are a little bit more secure in there. And it also is great if you happen to be someone who parks nose first under an awning or something on a wet day like this.
Yes, well, you know, handy to have that dry storage.
Dry storage and being able to get in and get out. So, I don't think I would personally own one, but I think by this point you all know that I am somebody who likes my vehicles to be more practical. There's a reason other than just price, why I didn't go for the top end F-150 Lightning, for example. I like my vehicles to be ones that I can give a little bit of a hard life to. I think you feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason that I own a Kia Niro, which is that I want a car that I can use as a work vehicle.
I would totally rent one of these on a long distance trip, though, if it was available.
I would accept that I have a car with comma.
You have a car with comma, okay.
And so the driver assistance in this, I think,
pretty
is
pants.
suboptimal for someone who wants to do a lot of long distance driving,
That's true.
unless they want to do it themselves. If you enjoy motorway driving, then fine. Have at
BMW
it.
is going to roll out level 3 at some point soon, we've been told.
Yeah.
When that's going to happen, we can't tell you because we don't know. But eventually, this car has everything it needs to do level 3 and possibly level 4 autonomy. But whether BMW will actually roll that out to this car or make it a subscription model,
Yeah.
which is probably where we're going. And I think that's also something worth noting here. If you're buying into this car, you're also buying into the subscription model that BMW has very clearly laid out for the future. And that could be a problem for some people. However, it is still a very expensive car for a very expensive niche market. And as the viewer count for this video will attest, a lot of you are not interested in it. And we are hearing you. We are working with automakers. We said it before in the car. I just want to reiterate it though. We want more affordable everyday drivers the way that this system works. And we have to play with the system. We can't play outside of the system, is that we have to review cars like this when they're offered to us so that in the future, if a more affordable BMW comes down the line, we actually get a chance to drive it, because car companies want journalists to drive cars. So we're driving this partly to benchmark it and give it a review for people who do have the money and want to buy it, but also so that at some point in the future, we do get access to more affordable models as and when they come out. And we both have our fingers crossed very much so on that. Final thoughts though. Would you buy this over a Tesla Model X?
I have to say, I have not driven a Model X, but I think the interior in this is more to my taste.
Yes, ditto. But that's not to say that BMW doesn't have its own, own issues.
It doesn't, but to be fair, this vehicle, they have been very clear about that this is where the materials are coming from. It's in there at the very end of their 400-page press release. Is this large section about this is where we're sourcing the materials for the battery from. This is where we're sourcing the materials for the car from. This is how we're cutting our carbon output for this vehicle. It is made from carbon reinforced plastic, much like the i3, which was such a leader in the segment of sustainability. And yeah, I mean, you and I both have issues with Elon Musk's political stances, and I probably wouldn't own a Tesla for that reason as well. But I think it's fair to say that BMW is really trying to build a more sustainable vehicle, even though it is huge and even though it is very much a 1% type vehicle.
And even though the company itself, like most big companies, is still doing things that we'd rather they didn't. It's still focusing on internal combustion.
And hydrogen.
And hydrogen.
Yeah.
So take from that what you will. That is it for today's video. If you liked it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to leave your thoughts below or in our free to join Discord chat room. There are links down in the doobly-dooblies below this video. And make sure that you have subscribed to this channel and to our other channel, Transport Evolved Take 2. Is really easy to do so. And subscribing helps us because that means that the mighty A is more likely to recommend our video in front of someone else's. You know how it works. Do check out Energy Sage. It is a great way to get solar panels on the roof of your home or to join a solar energy community project in your area. And now you can get heat pumps through Energy Sage too. Super exciting. And finally, also thanks to the lovely folks at U-Gears. Support a Ukrainian company this holiday season by purchasing one of U-Gears' amazing mechanical wooden 3D models for a special person in your life. Follow the links below. It all goes towards helping a great company keep itself running during a very tough time for the Ukrainian people.
And thank you on behalf of the entire TE crew to everyone who makes TE possible. That includes everyone who supports us on Patreon and YouTube, as well as those of you who just watch and share the video and keep the hungry algorithm far from us. If you're a supporter at the charged up level, you'll see your name here on our right. And if you have just joined and you're not seeing your name up there, I'm afraid we do push our videos sometime after we make them. Quite often it takes a couple of weeks to edit things down. This one is probably going to be a good month.
Yeah, in fact, happy Thanksgiving if you are in fact watching this Thanksgiving week, which I think is probably when this video is going to go out.
Yeah, but thank you to our self-driving tier supporters, Mike Weeder, Patrick Boyarski, Chris Maxwell, Brian Newton, Michael Goad, Bennett Elder, Andrew Martin, Guido Drahota, Brophy Wolf, Tesla in the Gong, Pedro Mura Pinheiro, Michael Johnson, Dan Blair, Peter Dillinger, Gordon C., Stephen O'Donoghue, Kyle Hodgson, Anthony Coates, Regine Fellows, Denny Hyde, Chris Ascenter, and Jim Burness. And of course, out of this world support to our Starman supporters, Andrew Glenn, Anonymous Freak, JP Fagerback, Joe Bresney, John Lyons, Rory Litwin, Kevin Burrowbridge, Laura Reynolds, Marcel Ward, Matthew Drobnak, Paul Conway, Reggie Watts, Will Graylan, and
Ian.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna phone a friend, but
Yeah, no, we got that one.
we got that one. Want to be part of that amazing list? You can join Patreon at the link below. Hit the join button below to support us on YouTube, or show us your support through Bitcoin, Ko-fi, or none of us are wearing it.
No, you could go to our cool swag store. Unfortunately, Trans Pride colours are not currently available in the swag store on a shirt like this, but you know where we're going with this. We have an incredible Pride lineup at our shop, so go there if you want a Trans Pride themed, EV themed, renewable energy themed shirt, because I think we're probably one of the few groups out there who are making all of those 3 boxes ticked in one t-shirt. So go do that. Rah. Anyway, thanks for joining us, and as always, keep evolving.